Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Great. Then I will call this meeting to order at 9:59. I will read the land acknowledgement. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hadiwandawung, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Thanks. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope? Okay. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda then, can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please? Councillor O'Hare has moved, Wynne has seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? All right, anyone opposed? Nope, okay, then that is carried. Next, the adoption of the minutes of our last meeting on July 25th. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes, please?
Moved.
Ray has moved. Tom has seconded. I'll call the questions. All those in all those in favor? All right. Anyone opposed? No. Then that is carried. Next, we'll have Nicholas take over this section. You've probably heard Joe has resigned from both the Heritage and the Tourism Committee. It's a huge loss for both the Heritage Committee as well as the City of Thorold, I think, but he will be concentrating on the Environment Committee, of which he is chair. I'm sure since a few of us are friends with Joe, we will be still discussing and talking amongst us, but unfortunately, we will have to vote on a new committee vice chair today. And I'll hand the formalities of that over to Nicholas.
Thank you, through you, Mrs. Chair. So I will call for nominations for the vice chair.
Oh, sorry.
Any nominations?
I have a nomination. I would like to nominate Wynne Stack as vice chair of the committee.
Okay. So I'll need a mover and a seconder to name Winston Steck as a nomination for vice chair. Okay, so gets Councillor O'Hare moving. Any seconders? Okay, Tom. Okay. I will call a second and third time for any nominations. Okay. Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to close the nominations for committee vice chair?
Moved by Ray Borland.
Okay, so we've got Ray mover and I saw Tom seconder. Okay. I'll call the question then. All in favor of closing the nominations? Okay, so that carries. There being only one nominee, so we can take the time to congratulate Winsome Steck as the new vice chair of the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Congratulations, Wynne.
Congratulations.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, first off, congratulations, Wynne. I'd just like to take a second to also acknowledge Joe Prytula for his dedication to the City of Thorold and to Heritage. He's worked so hard over the years that I've known him and years before as well. As our chair pointed out, he'll be sorely missed, and I wish him well in his other committee But I wanted to recognize his dedication and contributions over the years. So thank you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I think we will all concur with that. All right, then are we ready to move on?
Yes, Mrs. Chair.
Okay. Financial. Now we have correspondence. Is there any correspondence regarding the Heritage Committee that the city wants to?
Through you, Mrs. Chair, we've received nothing, no.
Okay. I have had some correspondence regarding Trinity United Church. We'll get back to that when we come to our historic buildings that we're discussing at the moment, of which Trinity United is one. Moving on to financial, invoices for payment. I know that during the last few weeks, the invoice for the balance of our website was handed in, and it was also, to my knowledge, paid by the city. So that is done. Were there any other invoices, Nick, that you know of that have come in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, the only one I'm aware of is the one that was already forwarded, and you're right, I believe it was paid too.
Okay, great. Beaver Dam's book sales. Does anybody know of any sales of the Beaver Dam's books? No, and as we have discussed before, we have to consolidate all the books that we still have and finally get them to the Lock 7 Visitors Center, which seems to be the best location to offer those books up for sale. One thing that is not listed on the agenda is just general budget items. I'd just like to recap quickly, if I could, Nick, what we've spent so far on our budget. I think if I add everything up, and this includes the $500 contribution to Sarah Kinghead's talk at the National Trust Conference in October, which was approved by Council. It also includes the still to be paid for bronze plaque once it's finished, which will be attached to the now designated Lock 25 in the Battle of Beaver Dams Park. Including all that, from what I can see, we have spent about $6,500, $6,600 of our budget so far. What this doesn't include is the $900 and some for the advertisement of the, or the publication of the notice of intent to designate. We still don't have a clear answer whether that will have to be paid of our budget or, as it has been in the past, that the city will pick up the tab for that. Do you have any news about that, Nick?
I don't have anything current. My understanding was that there would be efforts to try and find room in the planning budget to cover the advertisement, and then in future years they'd be broken out just so that's accounted for separately. I don't know if Clerks has any update on that, but I can circle back with planning and just see if there's anything else. But I appreciate the summary of the budget as well.
Does it seem correct to you?
I didn't get a detailed breakdown of where it was, but I can check that and just kind of compare numbers, and I'll let you know.
Okay. The reason why I did point that out is we still have a few $1,000s left in the budget to spend. Obviously, we would like to start another designation this year. This would basically only go so far as the research for another designation, because once the formalities of a designation process would be complete, we would be in the middle of winter, and that's not a good time to have a designation. So we wouldn't start the notice of intent or any of the formalities until early next year in order to be able to have a designation ceremony in the spring. by the end of May, perhaps. But, you know, if we can get the research out of the way already in the fall and use some of this year's budget to pay for that, then that would make sense. And which brings me to my next question. By when do our invoices have to be submitted in order to be still paid out of this year's budget? Does any invoice that is still submitted to the city and to council by the end of this year come out of this budget, or does the whole process have to be completed?
Mrs. Chair, perhaps
Yeah.
what we can do is we can take all that's been discussed on this matter and come back to it, set it as an agenda item for the next
Great.
meeting, and then hopefully have all the answers available,
Yeah.
or as much as possible at that time.
Great. I just want to make sure we don't waste time. It's still only the end of August, but time can run away very quickly towards the end of the year, so I just want to make sure we do everything correctly. We've already discussed anyways that the remainder of our budget will be spent on much-needed stands for information plaques for properties that have not been plaqued yet, but are designated, and also to have a stock for future designations. That was my contribution to budget. Does anybody have something to add? Nope. Then we'll move on. Ongoing business. Our properties that are being worked on or restored at the moment. We have Beaver Dams Church, of course, which is a long-running project. Any news about Beaver Dams Church?
Beaver Dams Church is having 2 activities this fall. One is a concert. I think it's on September the 16th. And another is a pie and tart sale, which I think they'll be picked up on the 23rd of September. So I can send you everyone an order form for the pie and tart sales. Actually, maybe just send it to Justin and he can forward it to everyone, if that's okay. And so that's what they were doing. They're having a meeting tomorrow night, which unfortunately I cannot attend because of another commitment, but it will be at the church, and it's the Beaver Dams regular meeting. And so if anyone would like to go, I'm sure they'd welcome you there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. And I assume, as always, any proceeds of these activities at the church will go towards the preservation of the building, right?
Yes, they have. I think it's a flush. They purchased an external washroom, which is quite nice, and they're raising money to cover the cost of that.
Great. Yeah. Great. The other building that is currently undergoing renovations is the Stone Store. I actually had intended to go by the site and check on progress. I have to admit, I completely forgot about that. Has anybody seen the facade of the Stone Store in the last few days? No. Well, we know from John Lally, who is the developer, that they are redoing the sign. There were some issues with rotten materials after the removal of the old sign, which have to be replaced. But they have been wonderful with, keeping up a dialogue with the Heritage Committee in order to renovate this building to the standards that are required for a designated structure. All right, then we'll move on to the installation of history plaques. Have they finally been located? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, not yet. But staff is working hard looking for them, and I know Steve has told me he will find them. It's just that through the process of having moved things around, they were misplaced or put somewhere where they're not sure where it is, but he seems quite certain that he'll find them. And I just wrote a little note to give him a call today and see if we may have had some luck there. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay. If this goes too far into the fall, then of course weather will again dictate that this be delayed until next spring. So if they could be located before it gets too cold to install these, I mean, with the stone store, we have to wait until restoration of the facade is complete anyways, but the Dobie House would be ready at any time to take theirs. Outstanding planning items, the Monroe House, we're not going to discuss that today, but I wanted to ask you, Justin, whether for next time I could submit a couple of photos that you could then maybe put up on the screen for everybody to see. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, that would be no problem.
Okay, great. Website, that's just a recap. It's complete. It's been paid for and it's up and running. This website is going to be a temporary installation until it will be taken over by the city's website. But I'd also like to remind the city that the information on this website really should already be accessible on the city's website. The new regulations in Bill 23 called for all this info to be made public on municipal websites by July 1st of this year. So, and I think when we had the heritage experts from the ministry here to give a talk, it was mentioned that this has to be on the website itself, not just through a link. Is that correct, Nick? Do you remember that as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't here for the ministry discussion about it, but my understanding is information should be accessible on the municipal website.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just take a look at the regulations and see, like you said, if a link is okay or if it needs to be on there.
Yeah.
If it needs to be on there, then I can work with planning staff to get that addressed so that their information is on there.
Okay, great, thanks. I hate to dump something else on them. I know they are incredibly busy as it is. I just know that there were these new regulations in the new bill, and I'm not sure how strict they will be in implementing these and how much leeway they will give municipalities to, you know, when it comes to incorporating it in the municipal site. Heritage permit status update. Do we have any news, Nick?
I did have a bit of news on that.
Okay.
So I've had some preliminary discussions with planning staff about what the permit process could look like. And I'm thinking about having an interim process where there's a bit more of a formal procedure in place for the time being, just kind of set out what happens when and how to review and comment on that. And then have an actual application process would follow that. My understanding is that'll take a bit of effort to set up and get in place. So I'd like to have something in place in the meantime so that there's a bit more in place than what there is now, perhaps. And then there's a formal process after that. I did intend to connect with Morgan before the meeting today. Our vacation schedules didn't work out because she was away, then I was away, and now she's away. So I'm going to have a meeting with her when she's back and see if there's any other updates at the staff level. And I guess stay tuned for the next meeting. So hope to have more to share then.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any
problem.
comments? Nope. Okay. Moving on, downtown facade program. Do we know of any new applicants for that grant? Nope. Okay. And the Tourism Advisory Committee. With Joe being gone, the Heritage Committee also needs a new representative on the Tourism Advisory Committee. This is basically just a person from this committee to sit on the Tourism Committee to report back between, basically reporting back to the Heritage Committee what's going on, since obviously the two committees are closely related to each other. Heritage is a large part of tourism. Are there any volunteers to make the time to sit on the tourism committee and report back to the Heritage Committee? Yes, Councillor?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to nominate Ricardo, if he'd be willing to sit on the Tourism Committee board.
Would you be willing? All right.
Yes.
Ricardo has accepted the nomination. Then can we vote on a new representative for the Tourism Committee?
Yes, Madam Chair, if you wanted to kind of put that to the floor with a mover, seconder, and
Great.
a motion, yeah. Great.
Okay. Can I then have a mover and a seconder to not? Okay. I have a mover in Councillor O'Hare, a seconder in Tom, to have Ricardo be our new representative on the Tourism Committee. So I call the question. All those in favor? Great. Anyone opposed? No? Then that is carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Meaning you have to go to another committee and tell us what's happening. That's great. Thank you so much. New business, Trinity United Church is not that new anymore. As we all know, Trinity United Church went up for sale earlier in the year. I had mentioned I had some correspondence with a real estate agent about this. This agent was representing a Christian congregation who was interested in buying the church. They put in an offer. The offer was not accepted. However, there's no more for sale sign in front of the church. So do we have any news about the church being sold? And if so, do we know to who? I have tried to find information about this online. It is not available. No? So we should try and find out who the church has been sold to. And if it is to a developer, to start a dialogue straight away about what can and should be done to this property. As the Heritage Committee has pointed out before, if the church does not stay a church, we are not opposed to development of the site as long as the historic church is preserved. I have heard through the grapevine that there was another interested group in the property and that they asked about taking down the buildings in the back, which are, 20th century buildings attached to the back of the church. That, of course, is permissible. It's just since the historic church is designated, that building should be preserved. Should with regards to that, should the property be redeveloped into housing or public buildings or commercial buildings, then most likely the interior of the church would be changed. The interior is not designated. There is high interest from the historical board and the museum board to save any interior elements and especially documents that are in the church, and we would very much appreciate for those to be saved and be handed over to the museum should that be the case. It is still possible that the church was or is to be sold to another church and will continue to be used as a church. But I'm just throwing this out there. It would be great to find out what the newest status is on this protected building. So if any of you, Nicholas, Nick, or Justin, find anything about that, we would appreciate to be informed what the deal is. Secondly, the Allenberg Church, I don't expect there's any news with that.
I believe Wynn had her hand up.
Oh, Wynn, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
No problem. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm just checking on housesigma.com, and I do see that the church is still for sale. So maybe the sign is gone on the property itself, but so far as right now, it's still actively for sale.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Allenberg Church, does anybody have any news about the condition? Or I have heard from the same real estate agent, oddly, as the one who was interested in Trinity United. Her client also at one point was interested in the Allenberg Church. She had been told at the time that the owner will be undertaking some renovations. I have been at the church a couple of times since. I haven't seen any evidence to that happening, but have any of you been to the site recently, and do you have any updates on that particular building? Nope. Okay, moving on then. Edward Beatty House, as we already said in the last meeting, the restoration of the roof has been completed, and also a report. The new owner did not have a heritage report on this building. He was not given one by the former owner, as should have happened. The report was borrowed from the library and copied, and has since been given to the new owner. With regards to that particular new owner, he is a real estate agent, and we have plans to get together a information session to him and his real estate colleagues to inform the real estate community about about what heritage designation means for a property, and what can and cannot be done to such a property, and dispel some of the myths that the real estate community might harbor about the usability of heritage designated structures. So that will most likely be coming up in the fall, and whoever is interested in joining me of doing a presentation to Milan and his colleagues will of course be greatly appreciated. With regards to heritage reports, Wynn told me the other day that she also wasn't given a report when she bought her house. So one of us should get over to the library, borrow the report for the Carter Holland house, and have a copy made so that Wynn can have a report on her designated home.
Madam Chair, Ray Borland.
Yes.
I believe that we as a committee are going to have to take a more active approach in letting the owners of designated properties and any real estate practitioner who acts as their salesperson almost immediately once they put it on the market.
Absolutely.
Give them the information, everything like that, because I don't know how to word it as far as the practitioners in Niagara, but they don't have a very good reputation provincially.
Can
Being
you
one at one time.
Can you repeat that, Ray? I didn't quite hear that.
I said that many of the practitioners of real estate don't have a good reputation within the province.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And of course, a heritage permit, which we're working towards, will, of course, make that problem a lot less problematic, and letting real estate agents and also owners who put their designated properties for sale, and also interested new owners in those particular sites, know from the get-go what is involved and what should be done in order to conserve these structures. And that sounds all very daunting. It really isn't. One of the things that we really want the real estate community to understand is that there are no negative impacts of a home being designated, whether it comes to modernization of the structure, of resale value, of sustainability. I mean, most of these homes can be far more sustainable than new builds. So we just have to get the information out there to basically educate a profession that has a lot of say when it comes to handing over these properties to new owners. They are, after all, the ones who are selling them, that they have the correct information. All right.
I believe Nick has his hand up.
Pardon?
Nick has his hand up.
Oh, Nick, just interrupt me. I'm terrible at seeing that little yellow hand. All right.
Thanks. I was just going to say, I'm on the Heritage Committee for our local municipality too, and it seems that's always a problem that heritage information doesn't get, presented or provided to new building owners. Sometimes having at some point the city will be informed of a new owner, and then that may be a signal to send out kind of a welcome letter almost to the new owner and say, hey, your property is designated, and maybe there's a little information sheet that goes along with that about what it means to be a designated property. But I think that's always something that gets lost as buildings change hands.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good idea to try and do something a bit more active.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Linda?
I think the potential buyer needs to know that information before they purchase the property. I really do think that everything needs to be disclosed as by the realtor before the purchaser submits an application to purchase.
That, of course, would be the ideal scenario. I think the problem with both that and with what Nick just talked about is that very often we don't know when a property is sold. So basically, if it is up to us, we just have to keep our eyes peeled when a designated property goes up for sale. Just be very vigilant about knowing about these properties, and then informing, as you very rightly say, Linda, the real estate agent, so that the property is marketed correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything needs to be disclosed.
Yes. The Flannery House, that is a case that involves the change of a designated property from the outside. The owner, as discussed already in previous meetings, wants to add a second floor washroom above a one-story, very old addition to the house. The addition of a second bathroom in that house is completely understandable. All it has is one very small washroom on the first floor. We cannot force heritage property owners to not have modern conveniences, so we have to be lenient there. They have done they have hired an architect to draw up plans. Those plans were submitted to a heritage architect, Mark Schultz, who has reviewed them. He made 2 small suggestions of how to change the plans. The plans were changed according to his suggestions, and I have since then approved those plans and given notice to the city, so the owners of the Flannery House can now get a building permit to have this renovation done. Any comments? No? Okay. Heritage walking tours, I have not heard any news about that yet. There had been plans between Joe, myself, and Marsha and Tony from the local events committee. Marsha has plans to set up, to ask for grants and support to set up walking tours with QR codes for people to, tour our city and find out about our heritage. Marsha was away for weeks, as was I. I haven't gotten together with her since, but I will as soon as the two of us can find a time to meet. And if any of you want to join that meeting, then please let me know, and we can make that happen. All right? Designation priorities. As I had already mentioned, we would like to start one more designation this year. It won't be completed, but we have I have a number of private properties that are still on the cusp. It takes a very long time to get an owner to be comfortable with the idea. There are a couple, though, who are very much interested. One, you might remember, Tom, when you and Craig saw the owners of number 82 Welland Street North. They are still very much interested in designating their house. They basically just want to find out something about home insurance, which I told them, please go ahead and do. They know where to go. And if this came to pass, this house would have to include, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't fly otherwise, if the, not ancient, but very old oak tree on their property were designated together with it. This tree, it takes more than just being a nice tree to be considered a heritage tree. However, this is a huge, healthy white oak, which is a species native to the Carolinian zone and unfortunately quite rare in Thorold these days. They estimate the tree to be close to 200 years old. And I think this is a site plant tree that would certainly, be a, gosh, what do we call it? Well, I would think it would be justified to declare it a heritage tree. If it has some kind of historic and socio-economic context as well, that of course would be even better. So, but only research will tell us that. The property is a very large property that developers have had their sights on in the past. The owner would like to prevent that property to become a concrete jungle. As it stands, this property is an ecosystem of its own with a wooded ravine behind it, and they will still own this property for many years to come. They don't intend to go anywhere soon. And preservation of both heritage and our greenbelt by then might have a completely different significance than it unfortunately has right now. But they would just like to take measures that both the house and this particular tree are protected in the future. So that is a possibility, but I'm not sure whether we can get everything going fast enough for this fall. I have suggested the St. John Schoolhouse in historic St. John for designation as a historic site. Nick, you have sent me a note a few weeks ago about having been involved or loosely involved in a project about that particular area. Sarah has a lot of info already about this school. It is a very early school from 1805. The building itself was restored and partially rebuilt in the late 20th century, but the site itself is important historically for the area. Unfortunately, I am not 100% sure who owns the schoolhouse. It might be the city of Thorold. It might be the District School Board of Niagara. I have sent Morgan a message whether she could possibly find out. I know Morgan and Tara are overworked as it is, but if anyone can, I'm not sure whether you would at all have access to that info, Nick. Would you?
I can check and see what I have. I don't have access to ownership information from the city, but I can take a look at the project we previously did. It was a management plan for the Conservation Authority, and I don't know if it was all Conservation Authority lands or if it was a partnership with the city, but I can take a look at what we have in our files at least, and then that may give a clue. And then I'll mention it when I'm talking to Morgan too.
Yeah. If once we know who owns the property, I think the property itself is very small. It's at a little triangular corner at a crossroads basically in the middle of nowhere nowadays. Of course, at the time, St. John was a very bustling community, but now it's a very quiet area. I don't think this particular piece of land that this property is sitting on would ever be developed. It's just not the right location for a development. And once we know who owns it, I would like to ask permission to designate it under the Heritage Act and then bring that to council at one of the next meetings if possible. Councillor, did you have a comment? You did this. Okay. Does anybody have any comments with regards to that? No? Okay. Oh, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I would have liked.
Okay.
I believe that with that particular, that's a lovely site. And I've had a number of over the years about trees that have been special, and they've really been identified as a witness tree, a tree that has stood for 200 years in that location, the advent of the Welland Canal, the development of the canal, all the things that have happened in that area. And I think we should look at it and consider it to be a witness tree, a witness to the history of the city of Thorold and the development of early Thorold.
That's really great. I appreciate that. Fantastic. I absolutely agree. I think the house is a very nice house. It has a lot of original details, and what makes it particularly special is the tree that sits next to it and basically witnessed the building of this house and the development of Thorold itself.
That's correct. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
With the building you're talking about at St. John's, I believe it is owned by the city of Thorold.
If that's the case, then I hope very much that we can persuade council to give us permission to.
And I'm actually referring to previous discussions that I've had, excuse me, earlier with this council.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, is it easier for a city councillor to find out whether a building is owned by the city of Thorold? I'm asking you, councillor.
I saw you looking in this direction, Madam Chair. I'm going to do what you just did, and I'm going to look at Nicholas, because I'm not sure if I'm privy to find out who owns that property, or if the city clerk does, or, so,
Yeah,
Nicholas?
we can definitely look into that and get back to you.
Okay, great, awesome. And I'm very sure that the owners that you already talked to, Mike and Janice, would be very willing to designate this time around. I just thought you might like to hear that, Tom.
So no, I'm very glad to hear that. I was very, very impressed when we did the tour of the many outstanding parts of the home and issues with the home, the doors in particular, the front doors.
Yeah.
And the folks, their enthusiasm for the property. And I remember our discussions that they were really concerned about the trees and the long-term planning and for the lot and the trees and the long-term succession plan, in a sense, for their property.
Yes.
So I think if we have the opportunity, we should pursue it.
Absolutely. They did mention that the one thing they would like to add to the exterior of the house is a side porch, basically a continuation of the front porch in front of the kitchen wing right now as a wraparound porch. I personally don't see any problem with that. That porch might at one point have been a wraparound porch, especially since the side of the house where they would like to add it is facing south. And porches in the past were generally employed to keep the summer heat out. And on a south-facing wall, that makes complete sense. And they also said what they would employ the same building style as the existing front porch, except that it wouldn't be enclosed but open on the side.
Well, as I recall, and it's been a few years since I was there, but there were scars or marks indicating an earlier building had been there or some type of building attached to what they're talking about currently.
Yeah. Also, most of the original windows of that particular house are intact, but on that particular side, a new window was put in sometime in the 20th century, which is not the right proportion nor the right cladding. If there were a porch over top of it, that would camouflage that oddity. So I don't think a porch would be a bad thing, and that was their only concern with, would they be allowed to do that or not? My personal opinion, and of course that would be put to the committee, would be perfectly fine. It's completely in standing with that type of building.
I would actually like to go back and revisit the property. If that's
Yes.
a possibility, I would certainly like to do it
Well,
again.
I know how you love to do that, so when we're going back, you're invited to come. I'm sure they would like to see you again. All right. Okay, any other comments? Nope, okay. So if we can find out who owns that schoolhouse, and if you could let me know as soon as you find out, then I would like to bring that particular property to council as soon as possible. The next designation project, I hope very much, will be the one that is so dear to Tom, but since that is a private property, we probably have to wait until the owner has figured out whether home insurance, whether they are comfortable with the changes to their home insurance to have it designated.
So, Madam Chair, just to speak to that, so I believe the next Heritage Advisory Committee meeting would be September 26th.
Yes, it would.
So if the information were available prior to then, hopefully, you would be looking at potentially bringing a motion then to bring it to council for the next meeting? Okay.
If possible, yes. Great,
Yeah, great.
thank you. Any comments? No, okay.
And sorry, Madam Chair, just a quick question. So that would be a motion to proceed with doing the background research and things to leading towards designation. So it's, just to clarify for clerks, it's not the notice of intention to designate because there's a bunch of work to be done before that happens. That's just to
Absolutely.
kind of get things rolling.
To get things rolling, to ask permission to do the research. So not
Perfect.
notice of intent. That wouldn't happen until next year. Since this is also right in the forest, basically, we don't want to designate that site in February. So, and since designation has to take place within 120 days, we can't give notice of until a time when those 120 days will fall into a season where it's feasible to actually have the designation. Okay, history plaques for designated properties. I've already addressed that with my budget questions. Whatever is left in the budget, we'll spend on additional stands, which we need. I have sent a quote request to McGee to give me present pricing on these particular stands in order to know how many afford. So I haven't heard back from him, but I'm sure he will within the next few days or so. And towpath signage placking recognition as per recommendations in the Trails and Recreation Master Plan. That is a project we're looking at for the future. Obviously, we would very much like to see this come to fruition. We have additional banners that could be put up on that particular route. Probably that should be delayed until we have a definitive answer as to whether our museum will actually come to be in the soon-to-be former fire hall. If there is construction happening along towpath, then of course it would make sense to delay any signage until after that's done. But this is a very historic area in Thorold. It might not look like very much right now since the canal was filled in, but this is the route of the former, both the first and the second Welland Canal. It is of major significance in the city of Thorold. We have some fantastic heritage buildings in the immediate vicinity. We'll hopefully have a museum along that path as well. So to then acknowledge that significance through proper signage and placking, I think would be the next step. And as soon as that is realistic to do, we should work towards that. Any comments? No? Okay. And lastly, the new official plan. I had been told by the city clerk that we will be given the opportunity to give our thoughts and input, so whenever that comes up, so that we can actually submit our thoughts, that would be great if we could be informed in order not to miss that opportunity. All right. That's our items to talk about today. I hope I didn't forget one more thing. Oh, I can do that in the roundtable discussion. Then I open the floor here for roundtable discussion. Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Carl Meisner Bald Cemetery has now been uplifted and it's available on
Great.
with the video, so it's ready to go.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Fantastic.
And we have completed the filming for the presentation of the Carl Meisner Bald Cemetery as it relates to potentially for the city to use in their tourism. And that will be finished by the end of September.
Great.
We will show it to you and the city can decide whether they want to use it or not.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And I assume you will keep us informed of any events. I know there's an event planned for the fall.
Yes, I will let you know.
Okay, great. Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to put in one more plug for the community market tomorrow night. It is heritage related because we have just newly designated Lock 25. And there is the patio called The Lock, where we have featured Niagara wineries and breweries. So that last event is tomorrow night, Wednesday, 5 to 9. come on out and celebrate the end of our market season and visit the lock.
Great. Ricardo?
Nothing to add right now, thanks.
Great. By the way, I don't know when the next meeting of the Tourism Committee is. If one of you could let Ricardo know, who is now the Heritage representative on that committee, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll let him know immediately after the meeting.
Great, thank you. Ray, any comments?
No. Sorry, losing my voice.
Okay. Win?
Nothing for me, Madam Chair.
Okay. Nick?
Nothing for me as well.
Okay. And Linda?
Nothing for me right now.
Okay. Justin or Nicholas, any comments?
Nothing for me, just a notification. So the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 26th for the HAC, just to clarify.
Okay, great. And as I said, I have something quick to add. Let me see. The Ontario Senior Citizen Association, together with various city organizations like the Library, City of Thorold, United Way, and supported by a New Horizons grant, has an information fair at the Senior Center downtown on September 15th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll send out a note to everyone. It's a Friday. It's from 9:30 to 1 o'clock. I applied for a table for the Heritage Committee. I will be there. If anyone wants to join me, they can. Win, I know you're working, so I won't put the onus on you. Tom? Great, awesome. Thank you. What we'll do is we'll have a short handout. I'm probably going to take the PowerPoint that you did for us, Win, for our presentation. That's way too long to give out, but I'll probably consolidate the arguments that we had on that in one particular 1 or 2 page handout that we can hand out at that particular event. Yes, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One thing we could do is we could actually bring a laptop and run Win's PowerPoint presentation live, so people can.
Oh, but
Actually,
it would be without words. It would just be to read.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Correct. So
yeah,
that's an
that's a
option.
great idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
But also so that people have something to take home, just some of the very obvious points why heritage conservation is, not just a quaint hobby, but something that is necessary in our present situation. It's at the Senior Center, it's in the morning, so the traffic will be probably somewhat limited to people who are retired perhaps, because obviously it's during working hours, but I think we should get our word out as much as possible in order to educate people about, the importance of heritage preservation in terms of sustainability for both the character and the identity of our city, our environment, and our economic sustainability as well, in terms of making the area attractive to tourists and visitors, new residents, you name it.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Linda, do we need a brochure, like a more formal brochure eventually for this? And it might be something that realtors could use for potential buyers.
Well, that is something to think about for, as you say, realtors. That is actually a great idea if they have something professionally printed. For this particular event, I don't think it has to be something, the event is in just over 2 weeks. I don't know whether we
No,
can.
yeah, it's too soon to
Yeah,
actually
so-
get that done for the 2 weeks, but to consider the brochure
Absolutely. I mean,
for future use.
Yeah, we have a very nice brochure, but it's a little bit out of date. So we can't really use that too much longer in the future. In the meantime, there have been more properties added to our designated list. And obviously other things have changed, so we do need a new brochure. And you are right, that brochure should have information on it for realtors in order to give any potential buyer of a designated property all the information they need. That's all that I have to add. And any further comments? And then our next meeting will be September 26, 10 a.m. Hybrid meeting here and at home, whatever works better for you. And if there's no further business, I adjourn this meeting at 10:59. Thank you very much, everybody.